We have time for a comprehensive review of and a tour of the landscape, but I have identified a few developments that I think are worth noting. I'd also try and, along the way, correct some of the misinterpretations. This is a strong view that Indian private sector works in such unique circumstances that it lies largely outside the pale of modern global management practices, and nothing is further from the truth. There was a time when good corporate governance was an innovation. Founders of management theories looked up to a few companies that worked fairly and well with misty eyes. They hoped that good business practices would be refined and spread far and wide. That diffusion has been uneven, to say the least. And even in India, there are companies that integrate good governance into their DNA long before anybody else was looking at them. Leaders sense the need for and advantages of changes before others do. They realize that these practices are not just good by themselves, but provide sustained support for their bottom lines. As I noted earlier, evolving global standards are in fact driving this change. There are areas where we can learn from global corporate meltdowns and make sure that we don't go down that path. There are those who are skeptical of empowering the minority shareholders. Many managers treat them as irritants that have to be humored, but minority shareholders ought to be a source of necessary advice. Many corporate disasters could have been avoided if these voices had been heeded to. If the board structure their interactions with the minority shareholders, their inputs can be incorporated while formulating strategies and making mid-course corrections. The new act seeks to empower the boards. The board is the main arbiter of strategic decision of the company. They need to be consciously diverse. Only then can they be more. The boards, I think, need to be fully diverse, and I'm very happy to say that we in the new act have mandated that a certain section of companies have to have at least one woman director on the board. I've made many friends who are women and have been asked to become members of the board, but of late there is criticism that it's only the nieces and the granddaughters and the daughter-in-laws who have been accommodated on the board. But I think this will change because the law has been enacted. There is a universe of talented women in the corporate world who perhaps have not been given due recognition while the boards are being formed. People tell me that these present provisions make it impossible to find good independent directors, and I'm told that the requirements are too onerous. Well, this has been done with good reason. There are many companies that need more light in their boardrooms. Independent directors are the only outsiders that are at this level looking inside. Independent directors are held to high standard only in respect of the matters of which they have direct knowledge. But having a diverse board in itself is just not enough. Having a board carries a cost. A company must try to look at the most modern and wisdom of experience out there and incorporate that. The board must meet frequently enough. Too many and too few meetings will be devoiding us of the purpose. Every board member must receive compact briefs prior to the board meetings. The board must be an integral part of evaluating the CEO's performance, leadership development program, and succession planning for the long-term growth of the company. All potential conflicts of directors must be clearly defined and dealt with. Similarly, former CEOs may be tempted to continue on the board, and although they may have important knowledge about the organization, I feel that they must stay away from the board of the companies where they have earlier worked in a professional capacity. They must, however, continue to advise their successors on a one-on-one basis. And I hope it's now clear that everything can't be legislated. Most changes need to evolve through practice, and there is no shortcut around institution building. An especially salient provision of the new act has been the chapter on corporate social responsibility. The amount of debate generated by the CSR provision has been as much generated by the rest of the act. Some cynics have said that this is a brazen attempt by the government to dictate how companies must enhance social well-being. And I've been very clear from the beginning that while the government may identify areas that would benefit from such spending, there should be no attempt by the government to micromanage this spending. The act is very clear. A certain class of companies need to spend 2% of their profits and replow them back into society. Now the rules are being framed. What areas you can spend is also very, very wide. But the underlying fact is that no company is subject to the Inspector Raj, no company is subject to being responsible to people on the ground. They have to be responsible to the board. And the CSR committee on the board must have one independent director. If a company undertakes a certain project, I think Well, I think everyone understands the companies that are making profits and are huge corporations, both domestic and foreign, are basically established here, getting resources from the community, from society, selling products and services. So if you are spending 2% of your profits in contributing to the overall well-being of society, I think it's a fair practice. There are some countries that have also formed loose legislation, but not as part of an act. So again, it's not mandatory way to spend. As long as your board is okay with how you spend the money, it's absolutely fine. And you don't have to give the money to a particular agency. You can choose how to execute that 2% spending. So there's a lot of elbow room being provided in the act. And this is a leap of faith, and I've said this before, because it's up to the companies how they formulate their strategies. If you're not able to spend the money in a particular year, you can always do it next year, as long as there are valid reasons for it. And this cozy relationship, sometimes we had some with non-profit organizations and some companies, I mean, that has to be much more transparent. And this whole act and the CSR provision actually is something that can give the economy about 18 to 20,000 crores of rupees coming back. So whether it's schools, hospitals, roads, drinking water, sanitation, environment, wildlife protection, there are n number of things that the companies can do with this money. So the decision of where to spend, the independence of how to spend it, and there is self-reporting and self-disclosure, which I think is something that gets missed when people report about the CSR spend. I feel that communities want to see a visible project work being done out there on the ground. Mere check writing is lightening one's conscience the easy way. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Susan and Michael Dell Foundation and others have become identified with particular interventions that are benefiting millions across the world. We can and should evolve our own model of CSR that is different from those practiced elsewhere, but we certainly need to give CSR activities a makeover, since profit making is often conflated with profiteering in the popular imagination. Also, there are some sectors that need to burnish their image much more than the others. There is no single approach that fits all, but whatever approach companies adopt, it has to go beyond just talking and check writing. Good corporate governance is also fair to partners in the economic value chain. This includes suppliers, distributors, customers, and investors. There are companies that turn a blind eye here recently. Professionals like chartered accountants and company secretaries play an important role in regulatory compliances, and together with independent directors form the conscience of the company. The professionals must be able to discharge their duties fearlessly. Cozy relationships harm corporate structures, hence introduction of concepts like audit rotation has been put into place. And I often hear arguments about the mismatch between capacity of the profession and the requirements of the new act. But would we ever consider lowering the bar for a doctor or for a lawyer? The idea is that leadership of the profession should rise to the occasion and to the challenge. And it's time for corporates to steer a new path, and also for professionals that are associated with the corporate sector. With the right frame of mind, enhanced corporate governance can prove to be the economic power engine of the country. It can be the differentiator between rigid and evolving firms. And I hope this view is endorsed by IMA and other industry chambers and bodies and associations. And I think your leadership will enable business to convert to a more responsible growth path. I frankly believe that India has a potential that still part of it remains untapped. And the Indian private sector has a huge role to play as a contributing stakeholder in the country's growth trajectory. We can achieve 8, 9, 10% of growth, sustained growth that is environment friendly, that is people friendly, and above all, an inclusive growth. We can't have pockets of growth and large chunks of our population not getting the benefits of that economic growth. I think the country, the governments, our society is very conscious of that, but we need to take action and we need to work in a harmonious fashion. I don't think it's the job of politicians only to contradict each other. I think we must think of the country, the nation, and as a member of the opposition, and Priya was just talking about me and my party, the Congress party is now in opposition, but I think we are and we will be a constructive opposition. It is the job of an opposition to make sure that there is no diversion from the path that is good for the nation. And only with healthy and robust debate, discussions, are we able to make and formulate the best policies. If we work with that mindset, I have no doubt that India will achieve much greater heights, and India's footprint, not just geopolitical footprint, but our economic footprint around the world will grow stronger and stronger in the years to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sachin. Sachin, as the moderator, I get to ask the first few questions. So first of all, as an opposition, I want to ask you, Modi is talking about replacing red tapes with red carpet. How feasible is that? And how far did your company's affairs bill go to achieve this?
No, I think there is no harm in replacing red tape, but as long as the color of the carpet is red and not saffron. It, no, because I think we have to have manufacturing needs a big push. In the curve of a country's economic growth, every industrialized country has gone from agrarian through manufacturing onto services. In India, we have a very, very strong IT sector. We export 100 billion or more worth of services every year. But in the manufacturing area, I think we've kind of not been able to do what other Asian countries have done. For example, our import bill for the IT sector, electronics import bill, will be $400 billion in the next 7 years. That will be more than the oil import bill. What we need to do is stop depending on cheap imports for our electronics, mobile phones, washing machines, televisions, etc. So manufacturing needs to really be the focus. And I see no reason why in India, where we have relatively cheap labor, good mineral wealth, we have very, very good professionals, we have all the ideas and patents, why we can't become the manufacturing hub, not just of Asia, but of the world. So that's one area that needs focus. And I hope that the government of India will work in tandem with the state governments, because a factory or a plant can only come up on the ground in a state. The government of India may make the policy of SEZs or industrial corridors, but the actual manufacturing will have to take place on land, which is in different parts of our country. So state governments need to be taken on board when we make such policies, and I'm sure this will lead to a lot of employment.
See, one of the things you said is managing India's resources. I mean, we had Chidambaram here yesterday, and he told us that, UPA 1 was fine, but after 2009, we kind of lost our way. Now, I'm second-guessing him, but I'm thinking he's talking about the scam, the 2G spectrum scam that came to light in UPA 2, the coal allocation scam. So do you think you people didn't really help?
I think he's not being charitable, because I was not part of the UPA 1 government, I was part of the UPA 2 government, so I really can't agree with him, because I was not a minister in the UPA 1 government.
So you're saying UPA 2 was better?
But I think there is a feeling among most people, at least, that the accusations about scams and the quantum of money, etc., was exaggerated to a point, and it played up in people's mind.
But it wasn't zero-sum either.
Well, right or wrong, I'm saying right or wrong, I don't think you and I should be deciding that, because there is a court, there are proceedings happening, people who have been guilty or will be guilty will be taken to task and should be taken to task. The simple point I want to submit to you is that you can't judge a government or a minister's performance based on the perception created, because in the last 10 years, if you look at the record and data, India grew at more than 7-8% for 8 years. In the last 2 years, we had a dip for many reasons. I think we, as a nation, will realize what UPA 1 and 2 did in some time to come. Because
History
we really
will
laid
judge
the
you like
foundation.
Manmohan.
We laid the foundation for what's happening today and happen tomorrow. I don't want to do politics, Priya, but the fact of the matter is the last 100 days of this government, or any other government for that matter, if you are launching a mission to Mars, it couldn't have been done in 90 days. This is something that the foundation was laid years ago. If you're opening a railway track to Srinagar, it took 15 years to make. If you're launching a PSLV satellite from Orissa by pressing the button, it didn't happen in 90 days. So it's all very well for the person who shoots the goal when the goalkeeper's in his face, but the ball was carried from the other end to there somehow or someplace. So there must be equitable distribution. I have been a minister, and I'm sure I've done inaugurations of buildings that were planned before I became minister. And I do it because it's part of my job today. But I should not, and I did not, take credit from the inception to concept to foundation stone. It's not mine, but I'm happy to do it because today I have the honor of doing it. So one must really, in government and politics, be able to share the achievements of previous and current governments in some semblance. I mean, it'll be wrong and foolish to give all credit to previous government, but then if you're saying that prices of onion is still 90 rupees a kilogram, and it's because of UPA 1 and UPA 2, then say that we're launching a mission to Mars because of Dr. Manmohan Singh and UPA 1, UPA 2. You can't choose that only that aspect is mine and this negative aspect is previous governments.
So no selective governance. No, but some of the tough decisions that Modi is taking could have been taken by your government, whether it's increasing prices or doing away with the planning commission. I mean, what are your views on the planning commission? You people were not happy with it. Some of your ministers fought with the planning commission.
I had no issues with the planning commission. I think every institution needs to be tweaked. You know, we are a country that is now looking at 21st
Why didn't you
century.
guys do it? You
Well,
had the opportunity for 10
I
years.
don't think just by dismantling one planning commission, you will achieve the world. If you want to have a different approach, and this government has got full majority by the people of India, they're welcome to do that. It's very easy to destroy institutions, but one must be very... I'm glad you asked that question, because when I was minister, there was an issue of Walmart lobbying in India, and there were a lot of accusations in parliament. So we had a very high-powered committee look at the whole concept of what lobbying is. Unfortunately, the definition is still opaque. In fact, it doesn't exist. It has a negative connotation in this country, lobbying. But if you are, like you said, you're doing advocacy, or you're informing people, or when I was a member of parliament and a minister, I would meet people from different groups. In a village, people come to me saying, Mr. Pilot, don't make a well here, or don't make a school here because it's too far, the land is not good enough. Those are inputs I'm getting for making a decision. Now, whether you do it to a company or to a minister or to a bureaucrat, information is needed. And you need all the information that you can get to make the best decision. Are you influencing decision? Perhaps. As long as people know what you're saying to me in full public view, and you must stand by your view. Sometimes some corporate so-called lobbyist will talk behind closed doors. Now, if the Federation of an Industry Chamber wants to talk about certain issue of the industry, if they don't talk to the minister, who will they talk to? The problem arises when they talk to the minister something in the room, and then they go talk something else outside, and they're not doing it in the interest of the entire industry, but only a select few. That's when questions are raised. As long as you're open about it, I think lobbying ought to be defined, it ought to be legislated, or at least some formulation of regulation needs to be in place, because people then misuse that word. And lobbying for a cause, asking for something, stopping something, this all in a democracy, we have to use platforms. But it must be done openly, it must be done in a transparent fashion, and people must not change their stand. Because every secretary, every minister receives petitions and requests from so many people. As long as we are clear about it, as long as I have my conscience clear, I frankly don't care how many lobbyists I meet. I'm sure I met them without knowing they're lobbyists. I've shaken hands and had coffee with them without knowing they're lobbyists. But as long as I know what I want to do, and I'm doing it with the best interest of this country at mind, it doesn't matter who's lobbying with me, who's not lobbying with me.
So is Modi right in banning his ministers from five-star lobbies? Or meeting industrialists in five-star lobbies?
I don't know, Mr. Modi, who is banned and not banned. I keep reading in some gossip column about what's happening to the other ministers or not. It's their government. They must do what is right for them. But let me tell you, the expectations from this government are very high. And I say this because after 30 years, there's been a government which has got a full mandate. It has no coalitions, it has no pressures. I mean, their fight with Shiv Sena is only for Maharashtra. But the BJP has got a full mandate. And in a country where the population is so diverse and large as it is, I think for the government, it's not the policy, but the politics that will become more challenging in the time to come. Because you still hear so-called fringe elements talking about all sorts of things which are not in interest of our country. And I don't see from the top leadership of the BJP a strong voice saying, no, that's wrong. They just say they're fringe elements. But if you're a member of parliament, if you're a campaign committee chairman of Uttar Pradesh, how can you be fringe? I think it's pretty core. So the government in the time to come, I think, will have much more challenges in managing the politics of it, because under the shadow of this government, there are many elements and many outfits that are doing disservice to our country. You know, we are a 21st century, forward-looking, secular, productive, proud nation, and that's what we must remain. If we get caught in these small fires that keep coming out, and these odd statements that now, because of social media and television, the whole country sees them, I don't think it's good. But if it's not, then someone with authority should come and clamp down on them and say, well, this is wrong, I don't agree with it. And that someone is nobody else but the Prime Minister, because I see in this cabinet, it's only he who decides. So he must speak up, and he should.
The one-man show. But you've benefited out of the fringe elements, because the recent bypolls have shown that people have not
that's wrong,
appreciated
Priya.
that.
That is wrong. I do not give credit to my victory or our victory to some fringe random element.
Okay, we'll give you the credit for that.
We worked really hard, and I think in Rajasthan, out of the 4 seats, all the by-elections in the country, every incumbent government got support in the by-elections. Samajwadi Party won in UP, Karnataka, we were in government, we won those elections. In Punjab, Akalis won those elections.
Except
Only in
Rajasthan,
Rajasthan, where the government was facing elections, and we won 3 out of the 4 seats within 8 months of them being in government. No other time has any government lost confidence of the people in 8 months' time. So it's about us are taking the issues to the people and working on the ground to make sure that people support us as opposed to the ruling government. So I don't think those fringe elements have anything to do with it.
So am I talking to the next Chief Minister of Rajasthan?
You're talking to the president of the Congress party, and it's my job as party president to make sure that the Congress comes back to power in Rajasthan.
Okay, now back to company affairs. Is somebody has a question for Sachin? The lady in the blue sari. I think we need a mic.
It is proposed that we're going to get a lot of investment from China and Japan, and maybe elsewhere. Now, what kind of policy tweaking is advised by you, and what kind of consequences are we looking at?
For bringing the investments into the country?
For bringing and, not only bringing, it should work. In what manner it should work, and what kind of consequences for the country are we expecting?
With reference to China and Japan, right?
Just China and Japan, is it?
China and Japan.
I think Japan has traditionally favored India, and I think they have been looking at manufacturing outside of China. And India is a very, very fertile ground for them to come and invest here. With China, it's our largest trading partner today in the world. It surpassed Indo-US trade numbers. But it's skewed in their favor, which is what we have to correct. Because the trade number seems quite good, 60 billion, 80 billion, 100 billion. But what we're giving to the Chinese is raw material, it's cotton, it's stuff that is not processed. And what we're buying from them is all engineered goods, engineered products. So it's skewed towards China. I think it's good to have a healthy bilateral trade relationship with China, but it must be evenly balanced. I think it's not in India's interest to have this skewed relationship in terms of quantum of money favoring China for too long. But Chinese companies have strong presence here. The other thing I think we have to be careful about is hot money. It's very easy for money to enter the market, but you press the delete button, money goes out. You rather have long-term sustained investments. And India's growth can't be the growth that you have in the developed world. This has to be a job-creating growth. If you have a 9% GDP growth, but it's jobless, you're creating value, but not adding jobs, it'll end up proving disastrous for us. Because remember, we need 15 million new jobs every year just to sustain the current level of unemployment. And when you have 300 million young people who don't have, who may not even have jobs, but even if they have jobs, it's below the caliber. You're creating so much more frustration. So we need to do skill building, like this government keeps talking about. We had in the previous government, the National Skill Development Council, which was mandated to train 500 million people in 15 years. We are well on that target. So a lot of the things that are happening now, people have short memories, and so do I. We forget about what we did in the telecom ministry, for example. She just talked about the 2G scam. Unfortunately, no one talks about what the call rates were 10 years ago. People would give missed calls and call from the landline. It's 16 rupees a minute. It's now a few paise. There are 900 million mobile phone users today in this country. We in our government had started the program of connecting every panchayat to broadband. 248,000 panchayats to get broadband, and they can have speed that can download a Bollywood movie in 4 seconds. That's the kind of pipelines we were creating so that e-governance, internet connectivity to the last mile is being done. No other country. In India, we were always accused of having very bad infrastructure, no ports, railways, highways, etc. And we thought, well, that may take 15, 20 years to build. But what we must create in India is a 21st century IT network. And I'm happy to report to you that already today, as we speak, India has an IT infrastructure network better than any other country of its size and scale in the world. Better than any country, whether it's China or Australia or Canada. We have today optical fiber, we are using technology, we are leapfrogging in ways that you can't even imagine. But idea is to deliver and empower people. Software. We've got sanctions to have on the internet, not just English, but Tamil, Malayalam, Kannada, Bangla, Urdu, those languages. You don't have to depend on English, because in India, if you're not English speaking, and if you don't have a laptop, people think you can't use IT. We try to make IT user-friendly for people who need it the most. We only do WhatsApp and chat and Facebook, but people who want medical records, who want NOCs, who want government help and data, they must be able to access information. Information is key. This red tape that you talked about, Priya, is about bureaucrats and politicians holding the power of information. If you're unlocking that power of information, you're making the common man getting access with no extra fee about what is out there, and he or she can then interface without human beings involved. you're able to achieve a much better form of government than any other part of the world. So India's 21st IT infrastructure is well on its way to being established. We had in our time done about 80,000 village panchayats which have broadband connectivity, and we are going to be achieving that full coverage in the time to come. All this we started in the telecom and IT sector, and all I get asked about is the 2G scam and the value of the scam and who did it. I mean, the courts are sending people to jail as we speak. Let's talk about what this country has achieved. 20 years ago, if someone told you that a guy who's pulling a rickshaw will have a mobile phone in his pocket, and your plumber will have 2 phone connections, and you'll be paying no money for incoming calls, and you'll be paying 15 paisa for making calls to Bombay and Calcutta, you won't believe that person. So India has potential to do things. It just needs the right policy, and the market will take care of most things.
I forgot you were also the telecom minister and minister for communication. Do you think, you did all these things, but in the end, what we remember is the scams. Did your
Whose
government...
fault is that?
No, that's what I'm saying. Did you communicate badly? Did you not highlight your achievements well?
At whatever platform I've got the opportunity, I've talked. But, unfortunately, and I say this with no malicious intent, what sticks in our brain is the negative news. Let's be clear about it. It's true. If it's actually something good, if you are doing even for a newspaper.
I think what sticks in the brain is a minister going to jail. That's a huge visual.
No, it sticks, but the guy is already in jail. If you keep writing about it for the next 4 years, what do you get out of it? But I'm not saying you should praise the government of the day, till the cows come home. But one has to be mindful about having evenly balanced news information, because what people read and see is what they think and remember. And if you only talk about the negativity, forget the governments, Priya. Every 5 years we have elections, governments come and go. And no party and no government is more important in this country. India is the most important thing. Are we doing a service to our nation by pulling down everything good that we've done and, blackening all our achievements and only pointing out the negativities? Because the world is watching what we do. BJP, Congress, NDA, UPA, it's our internal battle. We'll have this kushti every 5 years. But what we need to tell the world is that we are here to do business. We are one country. We are 1.2 billion people. And someone from the outside should not look at us as, 30 parties and, 4 governments and fighting and bickering and all the allegations and negativity and scams. And we're not a country of thieves, for heaven's sake. We're a proud country. We're an honest country. If there are a few, black sheep, it doesn't mean that the entire government is going to be corrupt. And it is not about winning and losing elections. It's about when you're given the opportunity, how much economic potential are you unlocking in your time? So winning and losing is part of our democracy. We win some, we lose some. We must stay true to the cause. We must make sure that we remain united. And this country deserves better. And I think we can all work towards doing that together. And I will still continue to oppose the BJP government in Rajasthan because I think they're not doing a good job.